Now, back at the beginning of the year, we uploaded a video onto the channel showing all the exciting trail running offerings the brands were bringing us this year. Now, if you've followed the channel for a while, you know I'm a big fan of the current Saucony running shoes. They seem to have worked really well for my foot shape, and I've got lots of happy running memories running in the brand shoes. When we uploaded that video, one of the most hyped shoes in it was Saucony's first ever carbon plated trail running shoe. And I'm happy to say we have got our hands on an early pair here in the UK. I think it's due for release at the end of August time, beginning of September. And yep, don't adjust the colour on your TV sets. This is a men's colourway and it is bright pink. So Saucony are going about their men's colourways a little bit different at the moment. I'm sure there's a lot of you saying there, but Lloyd, you don't get on with carbon plates in your trail running shoes. And you'd be right. All the trail shoes that I've tried up till now with the carbon plating, I've just found that it doesn't really work for me and they feel a bit stiff, especially when you're running on technical trails. Saucony have come up with quite a clever and unique design on that carbon plate in the midsole. So hopefully this is going to stop that from happening. So let's get stuck into the video and find out if that is the case. It's first run, first impressions time at the channel. I'm Lloyd Purvis and you are watching Run4Adventure. Hope everybody is fitting well out there and you're all training hard. Now, I popped the Endorphin Edge on my feet just to check the size, and I have to say it fits my foot shape really well and it felt great on. So I really am itching to get out on the trails in them. So what we're going to do is quickly go through a few of the specs. We're going to talk about the construction in a bit more detail, and then I'm going to be getting changed into my running kit, grabbing the cameras, and we are giving these a thorough testing. First of all, I just want to check everybody's sitting down before I tell you the price, because it is pretty hefty. So the Endorphin Edge is going to retail in the UK for a whopping £200. Good old carbon plate technology strikes again, you know. It's got a lot to answer for, you know. Weight-wise, comes in at a pretty light 260 grams in a UK 9.5, especially when you think about all the amount of cushioning in that midsole. We've got a 6mm heel offset, so you get 36mm stack height under your heel and 30mm under your forefoot. When it comes to the construction, let's start with that deeply cushioned plated midsole first. So you get a rather large helping of Saucony's super bouncy, high energy returning, performance-based compound Power Run PB. This is the same compound that's used in their performance road shoes, so the Endorphin Pro and the Endorphin Speed, but it's also the same compound that was used in the core of the midsole on the Exodus Ultra that we ran for its first time a few weeks ago. Really impressive out on that first run. If you haven't seen the first impressions of that shoe, I definitely recommend going along and checking it out, because you might be really surprised how many miles I clocked up on that first run in the Exodus Ultra. I think it's going to be really interesting to see how that full Power Run PB midsole handles the trails, especially on the technical stuff. But housed inside that super bouncy midsole is Saucony's flexible carbide AFX 3/4 carbon fiber plate. Whew, a bit of a mouthful, but apparently that's been designed to give you speed and efficiency, but without you losing touch with the terrain you're running on. And if Saucony can pull that off, I will be very impressed, because this is what's always put me off carbon plates in trail running shoes, is it just makes the shoes too stiff and I feel like I'm losing lots of ground feel and connection. Saucony say that the plate should feel stiffer when you're running up a hill or making your way up a mountain to give you those extra levels of propulsion, but then when you're coming down the other side, it should adapt to that downhill running and it should feel more flexible. So giving you a bit more contact on technical terrain or uneven ground, especially when you're moving at speed. So, you know, that all sounds great to me, but we're definitely going to find some hills on today's run so we can test it out. Moving up to the upper, and it's got a very lightweight engineered mesh construction, and Saucony claim that this material used has got a high absorption rate, so it's going to wick the moisture away well from your feet, so should work well in hot conditions. It is quite stripped back when it comes to the upper. This is a performance running trail shoe, so not a lot of padding around the ankle collar or in the heel or in the gusseted tongue, and there's not a lot of substance or structure in the heel of the shoe. So going to be really interesting to see if I can get sort of a good midfoot hold in that upper and a good lockdown in the heel. Finishing off when it comes to the upper, and we've got these structural overlays working from the heel, wrapping around that toe box. We've got some reinforcement around the lace eyelets just for a bit of extra durability. A little gaiter attachment down the front of the shoe there. A handy heel tab on the heel and on the tongue. And then we've got this unique sort of locking system worked into the laces. Carrying on the pink theme, we have a full pink Power Track rubber outsole, so grip on rock and wet rock should be excellent. Saucony have opted for a 4mm lug depth, so the kind of depth that's going to carry across lots of different terrains and handle most weather conditions. And it looks like they've sort of worked in a soft, flexible sort of rock plate under that outsole, and I dare say that's just to give that Power Run PB compound a bit more protection when you're hitting the trails. With a £200 price point, I am expecting great things from this shoe, and after being pretty disappointed with the performance of the original Endorphin Trail, is this the Endorphin Trail shoe that we've all been waiting for? And could this be the shoe that I'll be rocking at this year's goal race, the TDS in August? Well, I guess there's only one way to find out. Let's hit the trails. So we've started pretty early this morning. It is 7:30. The reason being is we're having a bit of a heat wave here in the UK, and temperatures in Cornwall at lunchtime apparently are going to be around 29 to 30 degrees. So I thought I'd get out early, get the run done before the heat kicks in. Up country, even worse. They reckon in London, record UK temperatures today, around 40 degrees. So I hope everybody is taking care up there. It is going to be a run of two halves today. So we parked down at Bassett's there and we've run up to the glorious Tahiti Woods. We're going to do a loop of the woods to test the shoe out on some sort of technical, rooted, undulating ground, because it is a deeply cushioned trail shoe and you can sometimes lose a bit too much connection and ground feel, and that can cause stability issues. And then we're going to loop back to Bassett's, grab the running poles, and we are going to rep the dips just to get a bit more quality elevation in my legs preparing for the TDS. But also we can test out those claims about that carbon plate design and see if it does sort of adapt to downhill and uphill running. It's going to be a glorious run today. We should get in about 10 miles, so let's get stuck in.
You just seem to have one single thing in mind. I'm canceling our date to save some time.
Right, what, 3.5 miles in, and wow, another Saucony shoe that feels great straight out the box. I know Run4Adventure is beginning to sound like a sort of Saucony fanboy channel, but they are just producing some killer shoes at the moment. That Power Run PB midsole with that speed roll technology feels pretty awesome. Super fast, really lively, really bouncy, very comfortable, but also super stable. I've been trying to find out lots of trails with lots of roots and uneven ground. I've been jumping over trees to really give it a thorough testing, and I feel nice and planted, especially when you think how deep that level of cushioning is under your foot. And then I've got to mention the weight. You know, at 260 grams, it's a pretty light shoe anyway, but it just feels so much lighter than that when you've got it on your foot and you're running. It's one of those shoes that you sort of put your feet in and then you don't even really notice that you've got a shoe on. So that always scores highly for me. I love it when you don't really notice a shoe as you're running along. But yeah, 3.5 miles in. It's great to be back into Tahiti Woods, looking amazing in the sunshine. Yeah, let's crack on with the run.
Against the wall, nothing's gonna slow us down as long as we
have burst out of Tahiti Woods back into this glorious weather, and we are heading back down to the coast path. Lovely to be in the woods. There's a little bit of breeze in the woods, and you've obviously got that shade from the trees. Nice and cool in there. I think the second half of this run is going to be a lot warmer, that's for sure. So we're going to head back to the adventure bus. We are going to be grabbing the poles, having a quick drink of water, and then we are hitting the dips. So let's go and get some elevation.
on the edge of life. In our precious time, wake up this restless soul. Nothing's gonna slow us down as long as we fall.
Tap out on the first of the double dips, and we've done 5.5 miles, and we've covered 1,000 feet of elevation so far. If you haven't seen any of our content so far where I come out to these dips, or as we call them in Cornwall, the bitches, we've got 2 steep dips back to back. You can see from some of that footage, you've got some big steps going down, big steps going up, some really technical descents as well. So I come out here a lot, I rep these dips, and in the distance of about 8 miles you can get 1,000 meters of elevation in. So a great place to come when you're training for any sort of big mountain ultra. But it's also a great place to test out that new carbon plate technology from Saucony. So again, coming down them steep dips, it should feel a bit more flexible, and then when I'm driving up the hills it should feel more rigid to give me more propulsion. Coming over those 2 first dips, I've got to say it did kind of feel like it was doing that. It definitely felt like I was getting some help when I was working my way up those steep climbs. Yeah, first impressions on that carbon plate are pretty good. We've got another 2,300 feet of elevation to get in, so I better crack on and let's get these hills done.
Against the wall, nothing's gonna slow us down as long as we fall.
On a day like today, how spectacular does the north coast of Cornwall look? I mean, come on, does it get any better than that? Although there is some people slightly winding me up. Down there in that beautiful cove, you can see that canoe, and look, there's someone swimming in the water. Now, I love hot sunny weather. I'd rather have this compared to miserable wind and rain, but oh my God, that looks so good. I wonder if I could run and jump off the end of that headland and make the water. Probably not the best idea. I think we'll keep on marching up this hill instead, but yeah, what a spectacular place to train.
Losing our precious time. We slide, slide, slide on the edge of time. Losing our precious time.
Tapping out for the last time. Another great hill session in the legs, preparing for the mountains in August. So what, just under 12 miles, 1,000 meters of elevation, and also a great test for the new Saucony Endorphin Edge. Like I say, good 12 miles, up and down, lots of technical running, steep technical descents, big steps to go up, and that lap of the woods. So I think the shoe's been thoroughly tested, but I've got about 500 meters to go till we get back to the adventure bus. I'm going to drink lots of water because I think I'm pretty dehydrated, that's for sure. But we'll see you guys back in the studio. Oh, that's better. Well, I'm back home showered and feeling a little bit more human now. I don't know whether you could tell, but I did have to sort of dig in a bit towards the end of that session to get those 1,000 meters done. I think the 11.5 miles from yesterday caught up with me, and I probably wasn't carrying enough water for those hot conditions, but you know, we dug in, we stuck it out, and we got it done. And you know, that's what training's all about. It's about conditioning our bodies physically to take on these big races, but also it's about mental conditioning as well. You know, to dig into suffering those training sessions, I think it really helps. So we definitely did a bit of that today. And I also think it was great hot weather training, because when you go out to race in the mountains, you never know what you're going to get. You know, I've been out at UTMB where it's been 35 degrees and it's so hard to keep hydrated. You're drinking so much fluid, it's a nightmare. And then I've been out there where you're going over the summits and it's -5 and you've got jackets and trousers and warm hats on. So it's always good to be prepared for anything. Definitely a lot of positives to take from the first run in the Endorphin Edge. So if we start off with that beautiful loop we ran around Tahiti Woods, Gorgeous in there today, a lot of shade from the trees and a nice cool breeze blowing through there as well. But I also really liked how this midsole handled the terrain. So it felt very fast and light and nimble between the roots, but I think it was giving just the right level of energy return as well. And if I compare this midsole to the midsole that I've just run in on the new Endorphin Speed road shoe, I think I actually prefer the feeling of this one. It just felt very exciting. I wanted to up the tempo, up the pace. I wanted to keep pushing and pushing to see what kind of performance I could get from it. But I think the biggest highlight for me was how stable the shoe felt. So I didn't lose any ground feel. I always felt connected, even when I was running in those technical areas. And you know, that's a really tricky thing to achieve when it comes to a deeply cushioned trail running shoe. So that new Power Run PB midsole definitely passed the test with flying colours. The upper was nice and light, wrapped around my foot, and I think we really did give it a thorough testing when it comes to breathability out there on today's session. Super hot, and I didn't have hot feet at all, so I think this upper is very breathable. Also sizing, I'd say it sizes up true to size, because this is a UK 9.5, fits me just right length in the toe box, and I actually think Saucony are probably one of the most consistent running brands when it comes to their sizing. The only slight issue I had was halfway through the run, I did have to stop and retie the laces just to get that sort of lockdown around my midfoot back after the laces had worked loose. To be fair to the shoe, it was while I was in the middle of those hill reps, so I was doing lots of steep sort of descents over and over and over again, and this can sometimes happen in a running shoe. So we're going to be keeping our beady eye on those laces to see if this continues to happen over the next few weeks. Outsole performance was very impressive indeed out there today. So over the course of those 12 miles, we had pretty much a bit of everything to deal with. We had tarmac, gravel trails, we had loose wooded trails, rooted trails, we had super steep sort of dusty, loose descents, and some really big Cornish steps to deal with, and it did it all brilliantly. When you're out there in the summer on those dips, when it's really hot and dry, it does get very loose and dusty, and it can feel pretty sketchy at times, but this Power Track outsole filled me with confidence, and I never doubted it once. And lastly, let's talk about that carbon fiber plate in the midsole. And you know, I've always been very skeptical when it comes to sticking a carbon plate in a trail running shoe, especially if you're running on sort of technical trails like we were today. I tend to find that it just makes the shoe a bit stiff and a bit rigid, and you can lose quite a lot of ground feel and connection, but I'm happy to say that wasn't the case with the Endorphin Edge. Saucony made some pretty big claims when it comes to that new design to their Carbide X plate embedded into the midsole, and I've learned over the years that you know, you really do have to take what these running brands tell you with a very big pinch of salt, but I have to say it, everything they said that carbon plate would do, it kind of did out on today's run. So I only really noticed it in the midsole when I was pushing hard up those steep hills, and it seemed to give me a lot of forward momentum and propulsion. Then when I turned around and I was coming back down the hill, it didn't feel too rigid or too stiff. I still had lots of connection, and it felt like my foot could still adapt to those underfoot conditions. On the flatter, firmer stuff around Tahiti, like I said, all I wanted to do was pick the pace up and run quicker. It felt super lively. Then you've got that great speed roll technology that just feels super efficient as always. And then when I got into that hill session, again, that plate just felt like it was giving me that extra bit of propulsion to help me get to the top of those hills. But not once on the run did I feel it was overly stiff or overly rigid or taking away any ground feel. It's going to be super interesting to see how it handles some longer runs. You know, I think it's going to be a very comfortable and very efficient shoe when I start creeping up the miles. So there it is, my initial thoughts on Saucony's first ever carbon plated trail running shoe, and I'm glad to say it was definitely a positive experience out there today. Probably one of the best carbon plated trail shoes that I've ever run in to date. I understand it's our first run, but I think today's session was challenging, 12 miles on lots of different mixed terrains, and I think it was a thorough testing for the shoe, and it really did give me a good idea on how it's going to perform. Obviously, over the coming weeks, we're going to get a lot more miles in the shoe, and then we'll be back with our full in-depth review. But I think it's going to be one of the shoes I'm going to gather up as we head over to Chamonix in August, and it is definitely in the mix when when it comes to the shoe that I'll be using for the TDS. I just want to give Saucony a big shout out for hooking us up with an early pair of the Endorphin Edge. It really is appreciated, really helpful to get the shoes early so that we can get lots of miles in them, give them a thorough testing, and then give you guys our opinions. So you're really well informed about the performance of the shoe when it's finally released. It would also be great to hear your thoughts on a £200 trail running shoe, you know, because at the end of the day, even if it does run extremely well and it's packed full of great tech, £200 is still a lot of money to pay for a running shoe. So let us know all about your thoughts in the comments below. Don't forget, if you've enjoyed the video and found it helpful, to hit that like button and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Super simple to do, just click on that red subscribe box down there in the corner. Not long now until we pack up the bags, jump in the adventure bus and head out on our road trip to France. We are so excited to go back to Chamonix, and you know, it's where I'm going to start the real training when I'm out in the actual mountains. But for now guys, thanks for watching, it's always appreciated, and as always, stay safe and keep on running. So what we're going to do is quickly run you through a few specs. We're going to talk about the construction. It is first run, first impressions day. It is first run, first impressions time at the channel, and I don't know what I'm saying.